1899, two Boer states, the South African Republic and the Orange Free State, became embroiled in a war with the British Empire. The war was long and hard, and both sides suffered significant losses. But then, using the scorched earth policy, the British Army was able to crush the rebellion and emerge victorious. But it came at a cost for the Boers, as more than 100,000 people were contained in a camp in horrible conditions, leading to the death of tens of thousands. While the British eventually won the war, it exposed Britain's vulnerability, especially as more countries, the US and Germany, were rising to becoming world powers. Welcome to Unveiled History. Now, in 1806, the British Army defeated the Dutch at the Battle of Blau and permanently settled the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. At the time, the colony was home to about 26,000 colonists who settled under Dutch rule, and among these colonists were the Boers. The Boers were itinerant farmers who lived on the colony's frontiers, seeking better pastures for their livestock. However, when the British took over the Cape, many of the Boers were not happy with certain aspects of British rule. One such aspect was the abolition of slavery by the Brits in December 1834. As a result of the law, the Boers who used forced labour would have been unable to collect compensation for their slaves. So, many of the Boers decided to leave British rule. Between 1836 and 1852, the Boers migrated from the Cape Colony, which is now known as the Great Trek. About 15,000 Boers trekked from the Cape into South Africa's vast eastern interior, where they settled. The Boers established two independent Boer republics, the South African Republic in 1852 and the Orange Free State in 1854. But then, in 1877, the British attempted to annex the South African Republic into its colony. However, the Boers resisted, leading to the First Boer War from 1880 to 1881. Unfortunately for the British, the Boers won the war, and the independence of both states was restored. However, relations between the Boers and the British remained tense. In 1866, diamonds were discovered in Kimberley, the Orange Free State. This prompted a diamond rush and a massive influx of foreigners to the borders of the Orange Free State. Then, in June 1884, gold was discovered in the Witwatersrand area of the South African Republic. This made the SAR the richest nation in southern Africa, unseating the British colony of Cape. However, the SAR did not have the manpower or the industrial base to mine the gold, so it decided to allow the immigration of outlanders, which means foreigners, mainly from Britain, into the country. As a result, the number of foreigners threatened to exceed the number of Boers, creating new tensions. So, in order to retain its control of the gold and control the immigrant population, the Boers restricted the voting rights of outlanders, the law known as the Outlanders Franchise. According to the law, only foreigners who had been in the country for 14 years or more could vote. The outlanders themselves were not bothered about the law, but it caused tensions between the SAR and the British government. The British wanted to undermine the independence of the SAR by demanding that political rights be granted to the British outlanders, thereby providing them with a dominant role in formulating state policy. However, the refusal of the Boers to grant this demand led to the failed Jameson Raid in 1895. Dr. Leander Starr Jameson, who led the raid, intended to encourage an uprising of the outlanders in Johannesburg. However, the outlanders refused to take up arms in support, and the SAR forces captured Jameson's men before they could reach Johannesburg. At this time, the tensions between both parties had begun to increase. So, in an effort to prevent conflict between the SAR and Britain, the president of the Orange Free State hosted the unsuccessful Bloemfontein Conference from May to June 1899. The president of the SAR, Paul Kruger, offered some concessions to Britain, but it was deemed insufficient by the British High Commissioner, Alfred Milner. After the conference, the British government sent more troops to reinforce the British garrison in southern Africa. This alarmed the Boers and led Kruger to offer additional concessions. However, they were rejected by Milner. At this point, it was obvious that war was unavoidable, so the Boer decided to take the offensive. On October 9, 1899, the president of the SAR, Paul Kruger, issued an ultimatum to the British, declaring that a state of war would exist between Britain and the two Boer republics if the British did not remove their troops from along the border. The British rejected the ultimatum, and the war began on October 11, 1899. When the war began in 1899, the British forces in southern Africa were unprepared and militarily weak. This made the Boers gain victories in the first few months of the war. The Boers had about 33,000 soldiers and decisively outnumbered the British, who could move only 13,000 troops to the front line. They attacked the British on two fronts, the British colony in Natal and the Northern Cape Colony. The Northern Cape Colony rebelled against the British and joined forces with the Boers. By late 1899, the Boers had defeated the British in a number of major engagements and besieged the key towns of Ladysmith, Mafeking and Kimberley. However, in February 1900, the Boer fronts began to collapse with the arrival of large numbers of British reinforcements. Under the leadership of Lords Kitchener and Roberts, the British forces began to take back the besieged towns. They also beat the Boers in the fields and rapidly advanced up the lines of rail transportation. By the end of February 1990, the British had occupied Bloemfontein, the capital of the Orange Free State. In May and June, the British had occupied Johannesburg and Pretoria, respectively. At the end of 1900, the Boer War entered another phase. For the past 15 months, Boer commandos, under the leadership of generals such as Christian Rudolph de Wet and Jacobus Hercules de Lorraine, held British troops at bay using hit-and-run guerrilla tactics. They harried the British army bases and communications. Initially, Lord Kitchener responded with barbed wire and blockhouses along the railways. However, when these tactics failed, Kitchener retaliated with a scorched earth policy. This policy involved the destruction of everything that allowed the Boers to fight, including crops, livestock and buildings. Homesteads and towns were burned down, as well as farms. This was how almost all Boer homesteads, about 30,000 in total, were razed to the ground. This action greatly devastated the Boers and even made some surrender. However, they were taken into concentration camps. The scorched earth policy left many Boers, especially women and children, homeless. The leader of the British Army decided to bring them into concentration camps as well. Eventually, these camps grew to a total of 45 for Boers and 64 for black Africans, housing more than 100,000 people. The concentration camps were one of the most horrible aspects of the Boer War. Initially, the camps were established to house the families of Boers who had surrendered voluntarily. However, as time passed, these camps turned into concentration camps as a result of horrible conditions. Aside from housing the families of Boers, the camps were set up to remove black Africans off the land so that the Boers couldn't get supplies from them. In addition to this, forcing black farmers off their land also enabled the British to use black men as labourers in gold mines. The administration of the camps was poor, leading to the horrible conditions experienced by the Boers. Food was of low quality, sanitation was deplorable, tents were overcrowded, and medical assistance was little to none. All of these led to malnutrition and endemic contagious diseases such as measles, to which the children were particularly vulnerable. The shortage of medical assistance made the situation worse, leading to the death of many people. The British press tried to downplay the horrible conditions in the camps, but a British social worker, Emily Hobhouse, helped to raise the awareness of the public. She was also instrumental in bringing relief to the concentration camps. However, despite her efforts, the conditions resulted in the death of around 26,000 Boer women and children and 20,000 black Africans. In the end, the resistance of the Boers gradually reduced, and by 1902, the Boers finally accepted the loss of their independence. On May 31st, 1902, the Boers accepted the peace under the terms of the Treaty of Vereeniging, and the two Boer republics were absorbed into the British Empire, with the promise of eventual self-government established in 1910. The impact of the Boer War did not just end with the establishment of self-government. It actually played a role in how South Africa developed in the course of the 1900s and beyond.